If you roll your mouse over the actual screen, you'll get this pop-up come up at the bottom. And the first thing you'll see here is your auto audio settings. If you click the up arrow, you can choose where you want your speakers to go to. So if you're using two devices, you can choose which device you want it to go to there. Okay. If you're thinking of coming in and talking, then I'll ask you to test your microphone first, which is this button here. So click that and it'll run through a test for your speakers and for your microphone. So if there's a question you want to ask verbally, just test your microphone first, and then we'll get you to put your hand up later on. I'll explain that next. Okay, the chat function, just here on the chat is, let's say, this button here. If you click that, you get your chat window up on the side, or sometimes it comes in the middle, depending how you've got your settings sorted out. And the default is to all panelists. If you chat, put anything in the box here, the only people that will see that is myself, Mick, and Richard. If you click the down arrow, if you click it to all panelists and attendees, then you can talk to everybody in the room. So if you want to have a go at that, you can, change that and just say hi to everyone, then everyone knows you're in here. So the next thing you have, some of you know how to do it, is your raise hand. So if there's something you want to say or ask me a question at the end, and we can then open your mic up, and you can ask it verbally. But let's say when you got your hand up, it turns to green. If you inadvertently touch that, just click it again, and it'll go back to. Oops, not that screen. It'll go sort of clear again. But if you want to type a question, just click your Q&A button here, and you'll get this pop-up window come up. And then you can type your question in there, and that'll light up and just send it, and then say Mick and Richard are keeping on what's coming in there, and then they'll read out the question to me when they come in. Can't promise I'll give you an answer, but I'll see what I can do my best for you. So say your raise hand button there is normally white. If you want to raise your hand, it turns green when you've got your hand up. So if you hit that inadvertently, then just click it again, and it'll turn back to clear like that. Okay. Another little thing you can do is at the top here, you've got view options. If you drop click the arrow, you get the drop down box here, and you can change your view to whatever you want it to actually be. Okay. This default setting is fit to window. So if it all goes wrong, just click fit to window and it'll come back to your default setting. All right. And the other thing you've got in the bottom bar is your leave meeting. So if you want to leave halfway through, I don't know why you would, but if you want to, you can just click that and you'll leave the meeting. Okay. And that is me done there. So I'm just going to end this part, and I'll get the other bit of the talk up. Don't know if you want to turn your video off there, Mick, just to save the bandwidth a little bit. Right. Okay. We'll just go back from where we were 2 weeks ago now, when I've done this for you. We'll just go through the telescopes again. So we're going to look into imaging now the solar system, some of the nebulae, and then onto the galaxies. Okay. So we've got three main types of telescope. Let's make sure I get the right thing here. So just a recap on what we've done last time. So you've got your usual refractor telescope, which has a lens at the top here, your eyepiece at the bottom. And the pros and cons on them, as I said, okay, you get a large focal length, which is a pro because it gives you high magnification. But the actual bad thing about these is the chromatic aberration, which basically means as the light comes through the lens, it actually hits. It actually comes into focus. The blue light and red light comes into focus at different points, which then means that you can actually get like the image you're looking at can have like a red top and a blue bottom, or vice versa, depending on on how your telescope's set up. I say there are ones out there now that correct that, but they are quite expensive, depending on how deep your pocket is. You'll see as we go on through this that you can spend an awful lot of money on astrophotography. Then we have the Cassegrains here. These are really, really good. As I say, you get a large focal length because the light is bouncing up and down twice. So these work on a mirror. Basically, a mirror at the bottom here, light reflects back up to a mirror at the top, and then back down to your eyepiece at the bottom. So that's how you get your long focal length with such a short tube. Say pros with these: large mirror, good focal length. The cons, basically the cost, and they have to be modified for imaging. Remember the last time I was on, I said I wasn't sure if there's any software out there now that would actually take out the problem of the imaging. The problem you get with these is that because on this fork mount, they don't track the sky like the equatorial mounts here or this one here. It tracks the sky by moving up and moving around, moving up, moving around. So it's doing a zigzag all the time, and it just causes trailing. And so you've got to get a drive plate, and that causes other problems as well by putting stress on bearings and things like that. And these drive plates are very, very expensive. Put the closed captions back on. Okay. Next thing we've got is the Newtonian telescopes. This is my scope here. Let's see, thing about these, relatively cheap for the size of mirror you can get. You'd always get more inches of mirror than what you will of a lens, that's for sure. Okay, so the good thing about these is that they've got good light gathering powers. They're really, really good for faint objects. Okay, they've normally got a short focal length. Now that gives you less magnification, but it does make the image a little bit brighter sometimes, and it does give you a bigger field of view. The only thing about them basically is the weight and size of them. They are fairly bulky, fairly big, and also they're not that good for planetary imaging because they give you a wide field of view and not a great high sort of magnification there. So we're going to go in and have a look at how we image the solar system, or how I image the solar system. There's different ways of doing it, different cameras you can get, which I'll go through in a moment. So sort of how we can get these shots of Saturn, Comet, that was Comet, I can't see that name, Comet Hartley, back in, I can't remember now, 2010, I think that one was, quite a way back. Jupiter here, the moon, and then we've got the sun as well. Obviously, don't forget the sun. Now, if you remember last week, Martin was going on about video astronomy, and I've just had a look today, sort of at the price of some of these cameras, because it was sort of in the back of my mind of what these cameras cost. It all depends how deep your pocket is to what you want to spend on them. They range here from, let's say you've got this one here, a monochrome camera, which is actually £800. You've got this camera, the ZWO here. I'm not sure which one it is, whether it's the same one as Eric was using, but that's £300. And then we've got the like of ZWO one here, USB camera of 118. So it's not too bad if you want to, start in it. But if you've really got deep pocket, you can go up to this one here. That's £2,336. And say these prices I found out today as well, so they're all relevant. If you remember, Martin was talking about video cameras. Well, there's a video camera here. I'd have to have a look again on our YouTube channel with the one he was using. It is still available. He said about 150 quid. I think he said it was £190. But you got one here, and that's £900. So don't go there until we find, if you're thinking about video astronomy, until we find out which one it was that Martin was using. Once again, you've got another one here, let's say sort of 465. So the price range is varied, very varied. So I don't actually use these. I've just thought I'll put it up for a bit of information so you can see what is actually out there, and maybe something you want to look at in the future. I probably will myself once I get a bit more money. But I say this is the camera that I use here for solar system stuff, only solar system stuff. Okay, not the deep sky stuff. It's the Philips 2 UCam. I did look today to see if you can still get these. You can't get these anymore, but the 2 UCam Pro is still available. In fact, Rother Valley Optics have got a second-hand one on sale at the moment for £40. So if you want a cheap way to get into solar system imaging, this could be your route in. I mean, from what I can make out, it comes with your adapters and everything there. Now, the reason these are so good and so widely used in astrophotography is basically this is the lens of the camera here, which you can pop out and take it out of the way. And then you screw in your adapter here that fits into your eyepiece. Okay. Obviously, you do also need some sort of capture software. Say, I used to use, I can't remember the name of it now. The one I use now is, it's gone out the top of my head. ProCap. Okay, it'll come up in a minute anyway. It'll come up. Sorry, WX Astro Capture. I still use that one a little bit, but it's a little bit difficult to get it to work with Windows 10. As I say, there's all different ones out there. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these because, as I say, there's so much out there. You've got to try and find the one that actually works best for yourself. Okay, but these little cheap video cameras are still available if you want to have a go at getting one and having a go at solar system imaging. So how do we do it? Right, what you actually do is you take a little video or an AVI of whatever it is you're taking. Now this is a single frame of Jupiter. Okay, this is one I took back in 2014, I think it is now. So this is just one frame of probably about 200 that I took. So it all depends on the seeing and, oops, that's not right, sorry, you know, the seeing and, you know, the atmosphere of how long you want your frame setting and how you set, you know, how you set it up. And so you've just got to play around with whatever capture software you're using, change the frame rate, change the balance, and let's say it's too in depth to go into a little half-hour talk to, you know, sort of to tell you how to do that. And it all depends which type of software you're using to capture your images. But once you have got your image, let's say you try and get the best, sharpest image that you can. Obviously, that's your baseline. That's what you're starting with. And then you need to stack the images. Okay, this isn't my image. This is just a screenshot that I nabbed from Registacks. I think this one is. Now, Registacks is okay for videos. It's not so good for film images, you know, camera images. But if you're doing video images, Registacks is the one I would suggest you starting off with. It's fairly simple, and more importantly, it's free. Okay. So what you do is you load your video in, and it will show you every single frame in there that you've taken off that video. Okay. There are different settings around here. This is for your alignment box. You can change the size of this box around your object. Okay. And then when you click align, it will start stacking all the images together. There's so many different sort of settings you can use in here. One of the most important ones, though, I think, is this one down here, lowest quality. If you use every single frame, there's going to be some dodgy frames in there where it's all shaky and you know, sort of out of focus, whatever. So it's always worthwhile dropping that down a little bit, probably 85 to 70% of the frame, so that you'll only take the best 70% or 85% of the video that you took. And I say, once you've done that and it's stacked it all together and you put it through your processing software, you can go from that, and this is my image, to something like that. Okay, and I say that is just with a cheap, well, I say cheap, that camera of mine cost me £70 when I bought it a few years back. But I say it's not up in the hundreds of pounds like the cameras I showed you earlier. So you play around, let's say, for let's say £70 camera and some free software. That's not a bad image of Jupiter. I'd say that was back in 2013. I've not done a lot of solar system imaging of late, to say, because the planets have got very, very low on the ecliptic, and they're actually down behind my house at the moment. So I'd have to lift my telescope and take it to an empty field somewhere if I want to do that. Okay. And say you play around with it a bit more, have another go at it. Different settings on your camera, different settings on your capture software, different settings on your stacking, and you can embellish it a little bit more. I mean, this really did bring out the north and south equatorial belts really well, and also the polars up here. So it's not difficult. The most difficult thing is your focus. Again, as I said earlier on, focus is one of the most important things. You just got to play around with your settings and do whatever you can, do the best you can. Of course, if you're going to go into it, what I would suggest is starting off with is the moon, because obviously it's big and it's bright. Okay, and this just gives you an idea of the difference in the size of your sort of field of view, depending on different cameras. The 2U gives you that much. So if you want to do a whole one of the moon, you've then got to start taking individual images of different parts of the moon, and then you stack them together as a mosaic. And you guarantee, I've done it, I know Bill Leslie has done it, you'll always miss one bit of the moon somewhere. So I've got a mosaic, and I've done 2 or 3, and I've always missed a little corner out somewhere. It's so really annoying. Let's say this is just a straightforward shot. It has been stacked, but it's not been played around with, you know, in the settings at all to actually clean up the image. And this is the image taken from a telescope with my Canon. So you say you get a nice field of view, you get the whole moon in, and it's a bit simpler. But once again, that's 5 frames I took there, and I stacked them all together. When you're imaging the moon, you really want it. You don't want the bright bit blaring everything else out. You want to get that as dim as possible within your settings. So if you do that, you then probably lose a little bit down the terminator here. But if you take 5 or 6 images and stack them together, then it brings it all out without being blasted out by the light coming from the moon. And there's a shot of the full moon. I think I've said in the past that the full moon to me is one of the worst times to look at it or try and image it. Basically because it's like looking at a car headlight. You can see the headlight at night, but you can't see the car. You know, the light's just blanging into you, and it makes everything so flat, really flat here. So if you actually look here, you can actually see down the terminator. This is the best place to be imaging if you want to make a start of an imaging. You get to see all the shadows and everything else that's down in there. So you get a lot more contrast when the moon is first quarter, last quarter, or, you know, give you somewhere around about here is about the maximum you want to go to. So if you want to get that side, then you've got to start getting up earlier in the morning or really late at night, because it's that's how the moon moves across. So it'll lighten up that way, then it'll start darkening that way. It's not until the early hours of the morning when you start getting the crescent on this side. And to say the moon, always a good one to start with if you're going to go into astrophotography. Right, okay, now the sun, obviously there's a warning here. You need special equipment to look at the sun. A solar filter is the filter on the front, on the objective side of the telescope. Okay, never put a telescope towards the sun if you've not got the proper filters on the front. Okay, if anyone's bought a telescope and it's got an eyepiece filter in it, it says sun on it, would you do me a favor tonight? Would you get out your box? Would you put it onto a hard surface and get a hammer and smash it for me, please, and get rid of the damn thing, because they are so dangerous. Because you can have them in there and the heat concentrating onto them can make them crack as you're looking through the telescope, and that is your eyesight gone in that eye. Okay, they should be banned. I don't know why they're not. Okay, so I take the images of the sun 2 ways. I've got the Coronado Pt3, which is a personal solar telescope, which lets you see the features on the sun. And I've also got, it's a homemade filter, I will say, but it's a full filter that goes over the front of a 10-inch telescope. And with my Canon 300D, I can get the whole sun in one shot. Now, this is what's known as white light. What you've got here is just, you can make out the sunspots that are on the surface of the sun. You don't get any other detail apart from that. But it's a really interesting way to take a quick picture of the sun, but say very, very careful if you're doing this. Get some advice if you've never done it before. If you aren't sure, don't do it. Okay. Even things down to like making sure that your finder scope is covered over, because you can be looking down through your eyepiece and the finder scope's above you, concentrating the sunlight to the top of your forehead. You'll soon have a nice sunburn on one patch of your forehead. Okay, you've got to be ever so careful doing this. Now, PST, safe as houses. Okay, this type of telescope, there are a couple of other ones out there, but I'm going to talk about the ones that I use. This cuts out 99.9%, I think it is, of all the light coming out the sun. Okay, and it lets you see the hydrogen side of things. And it's got an adjuster here, and when you change it, you get to see different features on the sun surface. Okay, once again, this is taken with my my 2 UCAM. So you can see the field of view again, very, very small, not even a quarter of the sun fits into it. And so you can start to see these solar prominences along the side here. I keep wanting to call them flares, but they're not flares, they're something totally different. These are prominences. If you look just above my pointer there, you can see this one is arching out, and the magnetic field is sucking it back in again. And you've got a couple of sunspots here that that you can see. And these sort of surfaces, these indents on the sun here is what known as faculae. This is the bubbling and turbulence that's on the sun surface. And so if you put it into, this one here was actually taken in monochrome, in black and white. I put it into Photoshop. and then up the yellow a little bit to make it look like a yellow sun. So you can play around with it. But I say, once again, you get these wonderful, wonderful prominences you can see with a solar telescope that you don't see with a white light telescope. So once again, if you want to have a go with it, be careful. But it is obviously very big. Say easy to find, so it's one of the easier things to start with. But I would suggest starting with the moon first. Okay. Okay, imaging faint fuzzies in the Milky Way. I'm going to run through this and galaxies because they're done both the same way, really. Now, there's two types that I use. Afocal, this is where you use an eyepiece as well. I don't use this very often, to say, because my telescope here, when you set it all up, there's an awful lot of pressure on the eyepiece holder here. And so the way this works is this is your T-ring. It's got the bayonet on the other side that attaches to the camera here. And then you've got the eyepiece part here that screws into that after you've dropped your eyepiece down in. Okay. Obviously, by doing this, you are dropping down your field of view drastically again. If you remember what I said about the sort of field of view I get straight through the telescope is virtually twice the size of the moon. This is now bringing it right down, very, very small field of view. Once again, your focusing now becomes even more critical and even more difficult. But I'd say the biggest problem I find with this, especially if you're using an SLR like I do, there's an awful lot of weight here, which is putting a lot of strain there. And I think you can actually see here, it's not even straight into the eyepiece holder, and it causes an awful lot of hassle, So if you're using like one of those webcams, or sorry, those other cameras I showed you earlier, then obviously it's much easier because there's very, very little weight to them if you've got them attached to here. Okay, because there is another type of attachment that actually allows you to slide a camera straight into that rather than attaching it to a SLR camera like this. But this is the way that I normally take images of galaxies and nebulae, and this is what's known as prime focus. So I've got rid of the eyepiece holder there. Okay, that's gone. And then there's another attachment I can put into here. And by unscrewing the actual eyepiece holder on the telescope here, you can see this is an unusual eyepiece holder. The eyepiece goes in there and locks in with those two grub screws. Take that away and I can screw that straight onto the telescope like this. So you've taken down that length, you've taken down the strain that's coming off of that, off of the weight of that camera hanging off the end of it. And I say, by doing this, you've now made your field of view much bigger, and it's easier to find stuff, let's put it that way, and also focus it. So that's prime focus, as I say, the way that I use it. As I say, keep focused. Now, the best way to focus once you're set up like that, especially with my telescope, because it does, if I got it in high precision slewing, it goes to a bright star first. So I always focus on the bright star first. Okay. And if you remember last time when I was telling you about it, I put those pieces of wire across the front of my telescope to give me the star spikes. I've also found it very, very handy for focusing because it does allow you to see these spikes when you're focusing, even through the eyepiece. I don't actually use the sort of live view. Because obviously it starts getting very, very bright in your eyes, and it drops down to dark eye adaptation. And if you're trying to look through the camera itself, it's very difficult to see anything in there to see if it's focused up or not. So I don't even bother using that. I just use the actual viewfinder through the camera. And I found having these star spikes, it just made it easier to focus. So what I normally do, take a snap of the star there with the camera, zoom in, making sure that it's nice and sharp, nice spots of light, and on all the other stars. Because when you zoom in, if it's out of focus, it will just look like a donut or it will look smudged. And believe me, you'll know if it's focused or not. Okay. I think that was Capella when I was lining up on something I was imaging last month. Okay, so if you want to start on the faint fuzzies, as we call them, I would recommend doing this one first, the Orion Nebula. Remember the other week when I was showing you these images, that's me there doing my selfie above Orion. So to get from just seeing that to imaging this, It's quite an easy step, really. It is fairly simple once you get that focus done. And then you can step yourself down and do some of the harder ones, I would say, quite harder ones. I mean, this is quite good, the dumbbell nebula, quite easy to find, quite easy to image. The ring nebula, again, a lot smaller than a dumbbell, but it's fairly bright, so it's easy to find. These two, not so much. This is the Owl nebula in Ursa Major, quite dim, actually very dim to see. And although M1, the Crab Nebula, is fairly big, it's quite difficult to image because of the structures, if you want to try and get the structures out of it. But you do it all the same way, okay? It's all done the same way. Okay, imaging distant galaxies. Right, the way you do it, as I say, I take, well, the last time I was out, I was taking like 200 shots. I remember Martin last time said it's very time consuming. Yes, well, it is time consuming. This is what I've done a few years back, actually, this one to show you. But when you get these single frames, actually, this is Registax. I'm not going to go into Registax. I'm going to go into that one. Let's say Registax is okay for videos, but I'm now using camera. As I say, Deep Sky Stacker is the best one to use for this. Well, the best one I've found. There are a lot of other ones out there, and as people say, no, it's not as good as, you know, Deep Sky Stacker isn't as good as this, isn't as good as that. The thing is, it's free to start with. I've got used to using it, and for the amount of time we actually get a chance of going out to take images, I'm not going to go into the fact of having to learn new software again and trial and error and see if this works, if that doesn't work. I know what I can do in this now, and I know how it works. And I say, I try to keep my processing time down to a minimum, so I can take. I spend probably a little bit more time than I need to outside taking the images, but it does cut down on your stacking and processing time when you bring it back in. So say this was 2014, actually, so when I put this talk together, first of all. And say I'm doing M74. Now, say this is a single frame, and this is about all you get from a 30-second shot. I think this would have been my old camera, so it would have been a maximum of ISO 32,000, sorry, 3,200, and a 30-second shot, and work that out by actually looking at the timings here. Okay. But this slider bar here, you can slide across, and it will tell you, that your actual exposure times and ISOs and everything else in there. It gives you an awful lot of information. Once you've taken your images at night, before you put them into Deep Sky Stacker, run through each of them, make sure they're good. So one thing you'll find there's, especially if you're like I was the other week around taking images in Leo and Virgo, you'll start getting an awful lot of satellite trails. It's a very, very busy area, Sky, for satellite trails. So ditch those. If they're no good, ditch them, because you're just putting artifacts into your image that you don't want, and you've got to try and get rid of later on. So say, just try and get the best image you can, take out any artifacts. Which is why I think, unless Mr. Musk doesn't do something about his Starlinks, it's going to cause us problems if we're doing this. But we'll see what happens. You say he's going to paint them black now, so we'll see what comes with that. So I think with this one, I've got 33 frames, so 33 30-second frames, but I've also taken 17 dark frames. Now, the jury is out on this one. I did put a question into Deep Sky Stacker Facebook page the other day, what people use on dark frames. Now, dark frames is basically, there's two ways of taking it. You put your lens cap on your camera, and then, lens cap on your telescope, and just take images at the same settings as you were with your light frames. Let's say what's called your light frames is what you've got here. Let's say, some people say you need one dark frame for every light frame, so I tried that. I've sort of gone now to being about 50%. So if I take 33, I take sort of 17, 15, something like that. I've gone about half as many dark frames as what there is to light frames. Reason being now is that cuts down your processing time and stacking time. Okay. There's different settings over here as well for if you're imaging different things. This is a generic one, so it'll just take an image, sort of take what's best for the images you've got. This is a star stacking one, so it'll concentrate more on stars. And this is a really handy one here, which is for comets. because even if you're just taking an image of a comet over about 5 or 10 minutes, it's going to move in the sky compared to the background stars. So it's going to be a case that it's going to streak in the final image. If you click that button there, it means it, and you align it onto the comet, it will keep the comet the same, and also it will then give you your stars in the background as well. So it's a really handy one. And that button there just saves the file. So say you put your light frames in, you put your dark frames in, and then you register checked pictures. So sorry, you check all your pictures, and then you put a checkbox in there, and you register checked pictures. Okay. Now another thing is a lot of people use raw images for this. They always say raw is better. Once again, raw images are massive. I don't know if anyone's ever used raw, but with my new camera, my 1200D, if I got it on the images on large size, I can normally get about 1,200 images on there, and probably up to 2,000 depending on the sort of size of the file. I went to do some raw stuff the other night, turned it on to raw, and it dropped it down to 250 images. So it gives you an idea of how much more information they're going to take. And once again, you've then got an awful lot more processing to do in raw. I'm having quite good results, as you'll see, by using JPEGs at the moment. I know it comes up, and when you check register check pictures, it comes up with a big warning saying using JPEG and how lousy it is, and this, that, and the other. That's as I say, I'm having pretty good results with it. And as I say, if you want to use RAW, if you've got a computer with computer power that can do it, then do it. But as I say, I'm sticking with sort of JPEG at the moment. As I say, then register that. Another box will come up. I don't know if I got the picture of the box. And you then start stacking the image, registering, stacking the images. Okay, and you get this box coming along, giving an idea of how much time it's going to take. Okay, this is the sort of final part of it. It does a register, then it adds the darks and subtracts dark and all that. One thing I will say, I've not learned how to turn it off in here, because it was taking absolute hours for my stacking to work, and I couldn't fathom out why. In Dark Sky Stacker, every image it processes, it makes a text file of it. Okay. Now, I don't know if you use clouds, but I've got a cloud backup on my computer. Of course, every time it was making this text file, it was backing up to my cloud. So I actually found out the other week, I turned off my cloud drive, and it sort of dropped my stacking time down by about 3/4. It was amazing. So just something to watch out for there. There is going to be a setting in here somewhere to tell you how to turn it off, but I haven't found it, and it's easier for me just to delete the images before I put the cloud back on. Right, so as I say, yeah, what it does, it registers all the images, it'll stack them together, it'll trace it around, and then you come up with a final stack size. Okay. Now the final stack, when it's done, the final image comes out something like this. Now, if you use Deep Sky Stacker, don't panic if it comes out like this. I think this is the artifact you get from JPEG, okay? But I've tried RAW, and I've had the same thing with RAW as well. So I'm not sure why this happens, but everyone says you get this, but don't worry about it. The way I found to drop this lightness down is by actually, if you click link settings and then just drag your RGB down a little bit to there, then hit apply. It then starts to darken it all down a bit without losing too much of the detail. Don't go mad on this, but if you go, if you overdo it, you can then click the back button. It'll take you back to where you were previously. And say that's what I found the easy way of doing it. Just drop these back a little bit, and away you go. There is saturation and luminosity in there you can change as well, but I don't mess around with that. I then do that when I get it into Photoshop. Okay. When you play around with it a little bit, you can then end up with images something like this. So from that image there was virtually nothing showing. Remember the first dull image? I'll just go back a bit. So from that, Galaxy was in there, okay, M74. With all the stacking you do, let's say there's just with 33 images, 30 seconds, you can end up with an image something like that, okay. This around here is an artifact that comes out of it. I'm not sure. I get this a lot on my images. I've got a funny thing. It's light reflection off the back of my house. I think that's what's causing it, because I get different positions depending on where I've got the telescope. Let's say from what you can do from that single one frame, putting 33 of them together gives you a pretty decent image of the galaxy. And I say, when you start learning it a little bit more and playing around with it a bit more, you can start getting different images, and you learn how to play around with the settings in Photoshop. I'm not going to go into that actually, just because that's another talk all on its own. So I still use a free version of Photoshop that I managed to get hold of years and years back, and I've still got the access code. So until that doesn't work anymore, I'm going to carry on using it. So say, once again, I know the settings on it. I know what I've got to do. If I get new software, you know yourself, you've got to relearn everything. Nothing's ever the same. And I try and keep my processing time to a minimum. And as you get on a bit, you can then start to play around with the settings. And as years go on, that was 2014, this was 2017. So that was taken at the Bothy. Remember the last time I was on, I said, making sure you find your dark spot. How much more information I got there, because I got no light pollution coming in, all taken with the same setup. But the difference with that is I had no light pollution, and it was, I can't remember how many frames it was, 49 13-second frames. Say that was at 64 ISO, 6400 ISO. But you can just see there how much easier it is to process when you haven't got light flooding into your telescope. So M77, these are a couple I took last month, and say this one here, M99. I love this one because I have this star in the background with star spikes, because I still left those pieces of fishing line across the front of my telescope. So say that's just one. That's all. I haven't put this in afterwards. I haven't put the star spikes on afterwards. That was how it came off the camera. Okay. And this is my project at the moment. I started it back in 2012, I think it was. I'm trying to get every single Messier object. All right. So 2015, I had quite a few gaps still there. Okay. But after the massive session I had end of last month, just before we lost the Dark Nights, and a few others during the year, at the end of this year, this is what I've now got. Okay. I'm now up to, I think I've only got 37 to go. But what I am doing, remember I was talking about SLU the other week. I'm using SLU for some of the further south ones, the ones I'll never get from here, or ones that only rise in the summer, or the ones that are only up for about an hour, very, very low to the rising, only up for about an hour during the early autumn. So I'm going to use them. Maybe it is a bit of a cheat, but I'm still setting up the missions, and I'm still setting up the way I take the photograph on it. There's different ways you take the photograph. Remember I showed you that on SLU. But to say some of them, like I've done one last night, M8 I think it was. Can't remember the name of the nebula. I'd say it's in Toucan, which you just don't see from here. You're never going to get it from here. So maybe a bit of a cheat, but it's a way to do it. Unless I go down south with my telescope one day, I might get some there. Oops. Right, what I'm going to do, almost finished now, I'm just going to show you some of the images that I've taken over the time. I'll put them into a little movie, and then we'll take some questions in a minute or two. And there we go. So that's me done. I'll just take any questions if there is any.
Oh, super. Thanks very much for that, Pete. That was some great images there, mate. As Martin's just said, I don't think the transition with the slides worked very well on Zoom. I think some people... No, the images were great, but it just seems to kind of stutter, stop and start a little bit.
I've noticed that myself.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's something with Zoom. I think CAC had the same issue the other week, so maybe it's a Zoom problem. Yeah, no, that was great. A couple of little extra bits to throw in. I think most people have seen it, but in case they haven't, Martin made a comment about going back to the cameras near the start. The camera used was the Mintron monochrome for $299.
I think, Mick. You're breaking up on me there, Mick. I'm not sure what's going on.
Oh, why's my internet going? What's going on? Can you hear me okay?
Froze up.
Can you hear me okay?
Aye, Mick was saying that Martin had
no, Rich is breaking up.
Commented that he used a Minton monochrome.
That's better now. Yep. That was it. I couldn't remember the name of it when I was putting his final bits together tonight.
Yeah.
or today. Minton monogram, right?
Chrome.
Yeah, and he was saying that he uses Debut as well as the software.
That's it. I know we got it on the recording. What I'm going to try and do is, as well as I'll look into that as well, and I'll put the links and everything onto our webpage. So if anyone's interested in that, they can just go onto the Sigma webpage and get the information. So we should do so.
Yeah. One other camera I'd like to throw into the mix is this. I bought this little Neximage 5. A couple of years ago, I got it £140 second hand on eBay. And you just basically, it comes with a 1 1/4 inch adapter, 1/2, 1 1/4, and you just stick it in the eyepiece.
Yeah.
And you connect the other end USB into your laptop.
I've got, yeah.
Yeah, it comes with the software. They do have an Neximage 10 out now, which is.
Hang on, you're
breaking up so
again there, Mick. I think we've got a problem in Elgin with bandwidth, maybe.
There's an Neximage 10 out as well now, which is a bit more expensive, but that's a USB 3. Okay. So a couple of questions from Martin. What is the aperture and focal length of your scope, Pete?
The aperture is a 10-inch Schmidt Newtonian, and it's an f4. Yeah, f4 it is. It's fairly fast.
And it says, did you use a Barlow lens?
No, I don't use a Barlow at the minute. I've just mounted. Well, I got Bill's old Barlow. Let's say once again, the reason being it just makes that much more longer, and the way that it fits into the eyepiece holder is putting everything off because of the weight of the camera at the back. As I say. Once I get a better camera, then I might start using Barlows again. But no, as I said, I've not really felt the need to. I mean, the images I'm getting, I'm pretty happy with. It would help with planetary, I will admit. Yeah, definitely, it'd help with the planets.
It says he's also asked an interesting scope you have, Pete. Is it a Schmidt Newtonian? How do you find it compared to ordinary Newtonians?
I didn't really do a lot of imaging with my old Newtonian, and that was only a 6-inch as well. So I can't really give a comparison. I mean, one thing it is good for is, well, you've got to be careful of more so with the Schmidt Newtonians, you need a dew shield or a dew heater, because obviously with the correcting lens at the front, it misses up a damn sight quicker than the mirror down at the bottom, so that's something to watch out for them. But I find it a really, really, really good scope. And so I bought it second hand. So I got it for £500. Someone was selling it down in Edinburgh when it was on eBay. I said I'll be down in 3 hours. It only just managed to fit in the back of my car because I had them on day at the time, so I couldn't put it through the seats at the back. But it came with a full set of eyepiece and everything like that, So there are some very, very good deals out there if you look at them. But as I say, anyone out there who's new to the hobby, don't go buying secondhand scopes without taking someone from the club if you want to with you. Just have a good look at it and make sure everything's working right. But there are some deals out there if you can.
That's
good scope.
That's good advice. So a couple of guys in Aberdeen, Steve and Amy, have asked, have you ever taken the stacked and sharpened the pictures and then stacked them again?
I've not. There's just what's called dithering, I think, isn't it? Something like that. There's another thing. As I say, I try and keep my processing to the minimum. It's long enough as it is. And I say, once I'm happy with an image, I then just keep the image, you know. And so I do spend a bit of time, not as much as I used to. So I do spend a bit of time in Photoshop, you know, cleaning up and darkening the background and bringing more detail out of the subject. But I do now try to just keep me processing to a minimum. So I spend a bit more time outside taking more images and that. Okay.
Yeah, that's all the questions. Unless anybody else wants to ask anything on the Q&A, if you want to fire some questions in. If you want to speak, if you want to ask a question, if you just stick your hand up and we can put your mic on. No,
like I say, it's a good way, you know. As I say, if you've already got a telescope, obviously a telescope's got to be driven. That's one thing I didn't mention on there. You can't do this without having a driven telescope. But even, you know, doing the social stuff, that camera that's secondhand is, you know, on Rother Valley Optics, I say it's there today, £40. It's a cheap way in, you know, especially if you've already got a telescope.
Okay, Catherine McPherson's just asking, she's saying she missed the first two parts of the webinars. Are they recorded somewhere?
They are on our YouTube channel, yes. Which I say, there's a link off of the sigma.astro webpage as well on the front page there. You can get to it from that.
Yeah, I think it's Sigma Online it's called, isn't it?
I've actually changed it now. It's actually Sigma Astronomy Club. So
okay.
Moray's Astronomy Club. I've actually changed the name. So.
Right. Okay, should be able to find it easy enough then.
Yep. But there is a link off the webpage. So sorry, off the website, off the front page.
Yep. Okay. So I don't see anybody else asking any questions, Pete.
No, that's brilliant. No, we all enjoyed it. If if anyone got any questions, you sort of know where you know where to find me, and just ping me a message. I'll try and answer the best I can for you. Okay.
Yep. Super, Pete. Thanks.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Oh, some new messages.